You know, I've never heard one single astrophotographer bring up the famous photographer Ansel Adams in their videos. Nor have I seen any posts among astrophotographers about Ansel Adams. Come to think of it, I don't think I've seen any posts among astronomers about Ansel Adams either. There's probably some reference to him somewhere that I've overlooked, but it surprises me how little somebody who is so influential in the photography of natural subjects is brought up in the realm of astrophotography, which is perhaps the purest natural subject photography of all. Maybe we overlook his contributions to the realm of astrophotography because his work is very much associated with mid-20th century national park settings. When I think of Ansel Adams images, mostly what I think of are extraordinary but stark vistas of mountains, forests, perhaps farms in the foregrounds or lakes, dramatic cloud cover skirting mountain crags, and bemisted light and shadow adorning wild places. I adore Ansel Adams' work. But why did Ansel Adams eschew color and shoot in black and white? Well, the short answer is, in Ansel Adams' time, color photography wasn't very good. Much of his work comes out of the mid-20th century, and if you've seen movies or images from that time, I'm sure you would have noticed the color had kind of an off look. They were still figuring out color science at the time, and color didn't really look real. Old color photography was shot in hypersaturated, ultra-crisp styles, which, when you think about it, is kind of what's become prevalent in modern astrophotography, isn't it? Now that's odd. I literally did not think about that till just now, this second, as I was narrating out this portion of the video. But it really is, isn't it? There is a remarkable trend in similarity between the hypersaturation trend in modern photography and astrophotography and the way color was used in the photography and videography to be found from the 1950s through to the 1970s. Movies and images from that time were known for an ultra-saturated, psychedelic technicolor that slowly graduated to more realistic coloration and gentler saturation as color science progressed and we moved into the 1980s. And Ansel Adams didn't care for it. He felt it was artificial and distracting. I came across an old textbook on astronomy in a used bookstore, filled with gritty, grainy black and white pictures. And one of the things I noticed while looking through the photographs in that old college textbook was, while those old images were blurrier and grainier than what we're used to today, the fact that they were portrayed in monochrome forced us to really pay attention to light and shadow. And when we move the color out of the equation and we really pay attention to light and shadow, we see more detail. In point of fact, our eyes see the detail anyway, but the gestalt, the image that our mind puts together, is more complicated with color, and perhaps enough that the mind's eye pays less attention in the presence of color to detail and attributes such as light and shadow. So, between that textbook and Ansel Adams' work, I got to wondering, is there still merit in portraying astrophotography in monochrome? I reprocessed some images to see what they would look like in monochrome, and yeah, there still is. Not only do monochrome images often reveal to us subtle detail and gradations of light and shadow that can easily be lost in color, but monochrome images bring with them a special beauty, a special light, perhaps a rawness, a primalness, all their own. And so, while I did not create this video as a tribute to Ansel Adams, the work of Ansel Adams has very much influenced the approach that I'm about to share with you, because I think his philosophy toward photography can apply very well to much astrophotography. You take a look and you tell me. This is an image that I shot last summer. It's a small region within the Soul Nebula, located here. I call it the Dancer in the Soul for what appears to be a little man dancing before a spotlighted pale curtain upon a crescent stage. As is typical of my work, it was shot in LRGB and developed to reveal true color, or color as close to the human eye as our eyes might perceive it, with only a couple small exceptions to help certain details stand out. Now, this is a pretty detailed image. We have a dark chasm between the stage where the dancer is, and a pale, dumbbell-like structure below that. There is considerable wind within this nebula, driving hard at the red and white gases and pushing them away in streamers, and transforming the dark dusty material into unusual shapes. Now, let me demonstrate to you how a gestalt works. A gestalt refers to how our mind perceives things. Our senses are a part of that equation, but our mind processes data on top of that. I'm going to illustrate this by removing the stars. Now, observe how much more detailed the image appears. The streamers of nebulous material stand out more clearly. The rippling, billowing shapes of dark dust are more obvious. The transitions between light and shadow are clearer. And yet, no detail in the image was changed, only the stars were removed. I'll place the images side by side so that you can compare and contrast. Pay attention to all the mid-bright and darker areas, and all the areas where there are subtle striations in the forms of the gas. I'll mark them now. Just by extracting the stars, there appears to be much more detail in the nebulosity. In point of fact, there is not more detail. It is rather that without the bright, pinpoint distractions of the stars, our minds are more able to focus on the subtle information within the image, creating a new gestalt, a clearer perception of the fine and subtle detail, the transitions between light and shadow, and the delicate striations and shapes of the dust and gas within the image, and even the much smoother but faint appearances of wave-like areas and billowing areas within dim and low contrast regions of the image. So, I keep using that term gestalt, and some of you might be wondering what that is. A gestalt refers to the psychological process whereby the brain organizes sensory information into a coherent whole. But the brain is imperfect. It can easily be tricked or distracted. And as you can clearly see between the images left and right, simply adding the stars while making no other changes to the image hides much of the detail within the denser and the soul region of the nebula. This is the case because brightness is a distraction. Just like bugs, our eyes are drawn to it, our minds want to notice it. Brightness in nature is unnatural, and instinctively, we want to pay more attention to what's unnatural. It's different, a potential threat or a resource, therefore by nature, a point of interest, and our mind will allocate resources to it. Color is another powerful psychological distraction. The human mind evolved in a world filled with greens and yellows, the color of the landscape. Strong variations in color within the landscape also become points of interest, potential sources of danger or resources, and our mind becomes drawn to that. We humans have exceptionally good color vision within the natural world. Some animals, like some birds, have better color vision. We're able to see 3 primary colors, which is rare in the animal world, but some birds are able to see 4. We cannot even imagine the colors that they see. But our powerful ability to see colors, 3 primary colors, with their combined trace yielding over 1.1 billion colors in perception, allow us to pick details very quickly out of the natural world. A tiger's stripes, for example, may hide it well within the foliage of a savanna, but its bright orange makes it stand out to we humans very quickly. Deer may not be able to see the orange vest that hunters wear, but we humans can spot that very quickly and know to be careful within the vicinity of other hunters. Color is striking, wonderful, beautiful that we can perceive it, but in photography and astrophotography it can be a huge distraction, and I'll demonstrate it now. Watch what happens to the detail in the dancer and the soul when I extract the color. All that is left in this image now is raw, primal, light, shadow, and fine detail. There are no distractions left to pull at the gestalts our minds put together of the information. And without the distraction of the bright points of stars and the distraction of the color, all the detail contained within this image suddenly becomes crystal clear. As before, to illustrate, I'll place the color starless version of this image beside the monochrome starless version of this image. As before, no changes have been done to this image, and yet areas of subtle light, shadow, and contrast stand out much more distinctly, and fine detail shows up better. I'll point out a few areas. The detail is present in both images, but without the color vying for priority among the processing resources of our brains. Our minds put more emphasis on the transitions of light and shadow and the appearance of subtle fine detail within the image. We see it more clearly. And whether Ansel Adams understood this in the form of the psychological principle of gestalts, he was nonetheless onto something. He knew that when you got the distraction of color out the way, and in this case I've also taken the distraction of the bright points of stars out the way, there was nothing left for the mind to perceive but light, shadow, and detail. And within the perceptive capacity of the human mind, which is excellent at processing visual information, all that light and shadow, all that fine detail, comes together, comes to the fore, and comes to life. Allow me to illustrate a little further with just a few more examples. First with color and stars, then color, and then monochrome. Extracting stars and colors works best with busy images with lots of subtle, fine detail and subtle transition between light and shadow. There are images where it doesn't help and can in fact hinder. For example, this one. This is an image of a fragment of the Andromeda Galaxy that I shot last year. I spent several nights on this target with the intention of revealing a great deal of Andromeda's dust lanes and nebulosity within a small, specific region of the galaxy. Here, I've removed the stars, but it probably doesn't help because star removal tools like the Star Exterminator sometimes have considerable difficulty telling what's star versus what is a fine point of nebulosity, especially when you're shooting another galaxy. So we have lost a little bit of the galaxy information, even though getting the stars out of there is less distracting to the eye. When this image is transformed into monochrome, we get a little more out of it, especially toward the center. The light there is bright and the dust lanes are subtle in contrast. And transforming the image to monochrome helps our eyes to pick out those subtle dust lanes. But we lose something too. We lose those bright red areas that demark the positions of light-emitting nebulosity, perhaps star-forming regions. So in this case, one has to weigh what's gotten versus what's lost. In truth, were I to decide to go back and reprocess this image to reveal the most information toward the core while retaining that nebulosity, I would mute but not entirely remove the color information only around the core and do it in such a way that the color transitions back into its full presence as we move toward the outer arms of the galaxy. That's the region getting lower and lower toward the left of the image. In this way, the muted coloration would be hidden so it wouldn't seem unnatural to a viewer, and more of the detail in the core could be seen. But this image is a very good illustration of why one must consider the pros and cons of every photographic development technique exercised on an image. Finally, let's conclude with what I think of as a pretty neat trick. Let's go back to the image of the dancer and the soul. Now, I'm going to add the image of stars back to it, but I'm not going to add monochrome stars. I'm going to add the stars back in full living color. Striking, isn't it? And it's eye-catching because at a visceral level, the part of our mind processing this visual information wants to make sense of it. The stars are in color, the nebulosity is in monochrome. It doesn't make sense. This image takes advantage of the fact that our visual awareness is drawn first and foremost to anything different and unusual. There is literally nothing artificial in this image, but it's a striking contrast of color against a monochrome background. And while the stars still detract from some of our ability to spot detail, especially around here, here, and here, in the subtlest places of detail that was lost in the color version stands out better here. And why is that? Most likely because the gestalt our minds are constructing of this image is pulled to the differences within the unusual contrast, pulled both to the bright points of starlight and the monochrome information which does not fit, making both these things strong points of interest and lulling our perception into one of high detail plus a smidgen of color, which makes for an image that is, in my opinion, both very interesting and highly aesthetic. So what can you take out of this? In developing your own images, you might find it beneficial sometimes to leave the stars out, especially if your image is of a very busy region of nebulosity with subtle gradation in light and shadow and a lot of fine detail hidden in mid-bright to dark areas. The bright points of stars will pull our perception away from that, and even though the detail is there, we may not perceive it. And likewise, as Ansel Adams recognized long ago, color itself can get in the way of the perception of light, shadow, and fine detail. So you may find that some of your images benefit from extracting the color. Reducing images to monochrome also has an emotional impact. I don't think it's that shooting in monochrome makes the images more emotional, but it does lend an image a kind of visceral character. It makes some elements of the image austere, emphasizing things such as the interplay of light, shadow, detail, structure, and bringing those elements together in a raw, cutting way, giving them a timeless, primordial soup kind of feel. And you can add some interesting pizzazz to that by taking that even a step further and putting color stars back in. All thoughts to consider, because there is a lot of latitude in how you can choose to develop your image and still remain accurate and true to the information. Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts. Now have fun doing astrophotography and get out there and shoot that incredible sky.